So our next topic is natural selection, or in other words we can say that survival of the fittest. This is a major factor, that natural selection is a major factor that adds variation in the population, because the one who is better would be selected and its gene would be passed to the next generation. So what it is going to do, it is going to change the allelic frequency in that population. So this will also violate the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Let us see what is natural selection. Natural selection is the process where organisms with favorable traits, means the traits which is beneficial to that organism or which help them to survive in the changing environment, are more likely to reproduce, means those organisms which are favorable, or the characters which are favorable in the survival of that organism would be transferred to the next generation via reproduction. In doing so, they pass on these traits to the next generation. Over time, this process allows organisms to adapt to their environment. One thing more that you should know, that the most successful one, the one which is most successful, will produce to maximum offspring, and the one which is moderately will produce fewer offspring, and the one which is you can say least adapted will be able to produce very less number of individuals, and ultimately it would be vanished off. So we can say that this ability to produce at a different rate the number of individuals after reproduction produced by a given organism is varying. So this is known as differential reproduction. In NCERT, this picture is given, this graph is given, and they have not mentioned anything about it. So what actually is this? This is showing the different types of natural selection. They are showing three situations, three different types of condition situation when natural selection get prevail. We know that there may be homozygous dominant, there may be homozygous recessive, or there may be heterozygous condition or intermediate condition. So which character is being selected under which situation? So we get three different types of peaks. So first one is, this one is stabilizing, okay? This one is directional, and this one is disruptive. Now we will discuss one by one and discuss them with the help of examples. So what are the three modes of natural selection? The very first one is stabilizing selection, natural selection, directional natural selection, and the third one is disruptive natural selection. I'm just giving you an example. Just imagine there is a population of rat which have different phenotypes, from very light skin to very dark skin, and intermediate skin color is also there, right? This is the original population. So this dark line represents the original population. Now just imagine that something happened in the surrounding, that the original population get shifted, means the light colored individual, the individual rat that were having light color get killed or are not selected, and only the dark colored individual selected. So what happened? The graph has shifted, or the population has shifted in one direction. So this kind of natural selection is directional selection. In this case, what happened? Both the extremes, means very light to very dark, they both are selected, okay, and the intermediate form are not selected. So what happened? This was the original population, the dark red line. So it get bent from the middle, and we get these two dotted peaks. One peak is of the dark colored red, and another is of light colored red. So this kind of selection is disruptive selection. And in stabilizing, intermediate form, means not the lightest one, not the darkest one is selected, only the intermediate is selected. Now moving ahead, first we'll talk about stabilizing selection. What is this? Under stabilizing selection, extreme varieties from both the ends of the frequency distribution are eliminated. What is this? This is frequency distribution of different alleles, or you can say different individual or phenotypes, right? So under stabilizing selection, extreme varieties from both the ends of the frequency distribution are eliminated, and which is selected? The intermediate form is selected, okay? So let us take an example of the sickle cell anemia. You must have heard about this sickle cell anemia in the early chapters. So if we talk about this situation, okay, this dotted line represents the original population, okay? So there was an original population of individual where very few were normal, very few were sickle cell, and majority of them was what? Carriers. Okay. Now what happened? In that population, suddenly a malaria gets spread. Now what happened? This individual which is having normal hemoglobin will not be able to fight with the malaria if treatment is not given. So its population is going to kill. But what about this? It will not exist in the population because it is homozygous. The patient would be suffering from sickle cell and won't be surviving. But the intermediate form, the carrier, will be able to survive. So this would be selected. Why? Because it is having codominance, means both the character would be expressed. So the malarial parasite will not be able to survive in this situation. So what happened? Its number will increase. So just see the graph. Graph is increasing. So what happened? This intermediate form is selected. So what kind of selection is this? This is stabilizing, right? Next is directional selection. Under directional selection, individual at one end of the frequency, one of the organism at one end of the frequency distribution is selected under favorable condition. So the frequency distribution of the trait in the subsequent generation is shifted from where it was parental generation. Just take an example of industrial melanism in that part evidences we have already discussed. Just let us discuss it again. So this is a picture showing two forms of moth. This is the white peppered moth and this one is dark color. Before industrial revolution, the number of this moth was higher. Why? Because it can camouflage with the background. But the number of this black colored moth was less because it was easily detected by the predatory birds. But after industrial revolution, when the tree trunks were covered by black soot, now the black moth was able to camouflage while the white peppered moth was easily detected by the birds. So it get killed. So before industrial revolution, the population of white moth was greater and they were less in number. But when the situation changed, when the industry started and the burning of coal caused soot to deposit on the tree trunk, then the black population suddenly increased. So the population shifted from one form to the other. So there is change in the direction, just like this. Okay. So this was the original population, but no doubt the mutant form, that the black form was there, but it was in the less number. So once that industrial revolution started, the population shifted like this. Just this would be more clear, right? So in the original population, the number of peppered moth was more and the black were there, but very less in number. They were not able to select because of the tree trunk. But once the tree trunk got covered by black soot, this were not selected, this was selected. So the population become of the black moth. So this is directional natural selection. Now come the third one, disruptive selection. Under disruptive selection, both extremes, in the very first case, intermediate were selected. In directional, one of the extreme was selected, and in disruptive, intermediate form is not selected and both the extremes are selected. Okay, so both extremes are favored at the expense of intermediate variety. So which get eliminated? Intermediate variety. It can be viewed as opposite of stabilizing. In stabilizing, what was happening? Which was selected? Intermediate. And in disruptive, which is not selected, intermediate is not selected because the intermediate types are selected. किसमें select हो रहे थे? Intermediate type, they were selected in stabilizing. Okay, just take an example. Just imagine that this is the original population. This is the original population of a rabbit. Okay, I'm taking a hypothetical example. There is a population of rabbit where three different forms of rabbit are there. They are white, they are gray, and they are brown. Okay. Now, white colored rabbit were able to camouflage themselves in white background of Himalayan region, which is snow cap, the region where snowfall. They were able to camouflage them, so they were easily to hide. So that form gets selected in that area where snowfall was there, and the other form was brown. Those lived in rocky areas. So those who were able to camouflage with the rocky area were selected. And the one that was gray, earlier the gray was there, right? Now the gray population is being not selected. Why? Because it cannot camouflage here also, or it cannot camouflage in this condition also. So in both the cases, you can say that the white population was selected by the white background and the brown population was selected because of the brown rocks, and the gray was not selected, or the chances of selection of gray was less. So this kind of graph, you can see this was the original population, but after selection the population turned red. Okay, two extremes were selected, the intermediate form is not selected. So here we finished the natural selection. Now finally we have reached our practice questions. Question number 1, what are the 3 different ways in which selection may occur? Question number 2, fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. Explain with suitable example. Question number 3, why has natural selection not eliminated sickle cell anemia? Question number 4, give an example of directional selection.